Hello, geography students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 18, Section 4, Iran. So let's take a look. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the history here to start with. When we go back to ancient times, the Persian Empire was really centered around what is now present day Iran. And starting in the 500 BCs, the Persian Empire ruled the region around present day Iran. Persia was known for its spectacular paintings, its beautiful oriental carpets, metalwork, and architecture. Its glorious capital was called Persepolis, and it contained walls and statues throughout the cities that were glittered with gold and silver and precious jewels. The Persians were eventually conquered by several different Muslim empires. The Muslims eventually converted the Persians to Islam, but the people of Iran have kind of retained their Persian culture. So it kind of sets them apart from the rest of the Middle East. Kind of moving up in time, we're going to talk about a few events that happened in the 20th century, and we want to talk about what occurred right after World War I in 1921, when an Iranian military officer took power and encouraged change. And as a result, he claimed an old Persian title of Shah, which basically means king or emperor. In about 20 years, his son, who was named Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who you see pictured below on the left hand side in the military uniform, took control of Iran. And he kind of allied himself with the United States and Great Britain. But at the same time, some of the policies that he implemented in his country were very unpopular with most of the people. One of the things that he tried to do was to modernize the country and to step away from traditional Islamic values, meaning that women wouldn't have to wear veils in public and they could dress in Western style clothing, very similar to what happened in the country of Turkey. But among the rural people who were poor and destitute, they found some of these policies to be basically just not doable. So in 1978, the Iranians began a revolution and they eventually were able to overthrow the Shah. And this was kind of a weird deal because the Shah at that time um, had some medical issues going on. He actually had been diagnosed with cancer and he had left Iran to seek medical treatment elsewhere. And this is where we get involved in this because originally he left the country and he ended up going to France and then eventually he went to Mexico. But he truly wanted to be in the United States to receive treatment for his cancer. And as a result of him leaving, those people who were left set up an Islamic Republic, which really followed strict Islamic law. And for the most part, that is still what is happening in Iran to this day. Some of those revolutionists in 1979 who were upset with the Shah got upset when the United States allowed the Shah to come in to the United States to seek asylum and to receive medical treatment. And as a result, they attacked the US embassy in Iran's capital of Tehran. And as a result of that, some of the Americans who were there to kind of seek protection during this revolution were taken hostage by these young Islamic revolutionaries. And they were held for over 444 days. Today in Iran, Iran has a population of roughly 68 million people, and more than half of the population is under the age of 30. So it's a very young nation in that regard. Iran is ethnically diverse, and it does include people who kind of call themselves Persians. In the north, you might see some people that have ties to Azerbaijan. You have Kurds, you have Arabs, and you also have Turks. That kind of rounds up the ethnic diversity. Most Iranians are Shia Muslims, which basically means that they link the authenticity of their faith back to Muhammad and his descendants. About 10% of the rest of the population are Sunni Muslims. There is a minority of Christians, Jews, and a religion that goes back to the time of the ancient Persians known as Zoroaster. This religion is, it's got some elements that sound a little bit like Christianity and a little bit like Judaism. There is definitely this concept of heaven and hell, but it's kind of a unique faith. Anyway, Iranians celebrate the Islamic holidays, and they also celebrate a Persian holiday known as Nowruz. This is the Persian New Year that kind of dates back in time. And for when the Iranians celebrate this, they typically spend a lot of time outdoors. Family is also very important to the Iranians, and most family gatherings do center around Persian foods. And this includes foods like rice, bread, vegetables, fruits, lamb, and tea. Government and economics. Iran is one of the largest, has one of the largest oil reserves in the world. Agriculture employs nearly a third of the Iranian workforce. But because of some political things, these two economic resources have sometimes been uh, not fully utilized because of sanctions and things like that that other governments have put on Iran because of some of their actions, like the use of nuclear weapons and testing of that. So, Iran's current form of government is what we call a theocracy, which basically means that the government is ruled by religious beliefs. And the head of government is technically a religious leader known as an ayatollah. Um, this is our supreme leader or their supreme leader. They have unlimited power. And for the most part, they can control the happenings in government. Iran has an elected president and an elected parliament, but they really take their lead from the ayatollah. The government has taken on hardline policies calling for the destruction of Israel. And because of that, the United States and many other countries have had to really kind of put pressure on Iran because of the fact that they have basically called for terroristic attacks in that part of the world. The US and many European nations are today concerned about the fact that Iran might build nuclear weapons, and they see that as a threat to world security. Thank you very much.